So, hello everyone. Welcome to my stream on the 18th of April 2025. It's been a slow week. It's definitely been a slow week. Um, Bitcoin hasn't really made much moves. We've kind of had this like sideways consolidation that's kind of been happening. So, we've been bouncing around the 86,000 to 83,000 area. So if we zoom in a little bit. So you can see that we pretty much topped originally at around 86K, went down to about 83K, topped at about 86,000, almost 200, yeah, just over 86,200 again. Back down to around 83K again, and we're just kind of ranging a little bit. Now, um, 86,200, that for me was an area of interest where we have possible resistance. And we have support down here now at 83K. So 83K is basically our one of our important Fibonacci levels, right? So, we can kind of take this in different ways, but typically what we would do is we would take our previous swing low down here to the previous swing high, and we can look at our Fibonacci levels, and you can see that our Fib levels are telling us that the 38.2 retracement area was at 83,400. Now, we've obviously touched that quite a few times. Okay. Um, let's make sure this is exact. Yeah, we've touched that a few times. We've tried to use it as a trampoline to bounce off and obviously push up further. We we have, and obviously we keep meeting this 86K resistance up here. Come back down, obviously pushed above it. Now, the question will be, if we break below this support here, this fib level, right? And have an actual sustained break below that level. Because you can see we've not really sustained a break below it. I mean, we kind of had a little candle closure below and then obviously reclaimed that, but we're just bouncing around this area. My main area of interest is around this 83 level here. I personally see us possibly going lower before we go higher, but that'll obviously depend on how the next few days pan out. Obviously, it's hard to say. We can't definitively say that we are going down. What I will say is that it will be more likely for us to go down further if we break below this 83,000 level here where these wicks have been. So if we break below, then there is a higher chance that I think we may see possibly the 82, 81.5K area tested. And last resort would be around this 80,000, around 80,000, 80,200, right? So if you look at it here, we have this essentially an order block down here, right? It's pretty much what we have. We have this level down here that Bitcoin could potentially pull back to and tap it, and then we can possibly see higher prices and continue upwards. There is still a chance that Bitcoin can obviously go up higher directly, but it will have to do that around about this area. So it will have to do that before it breaks below this 83,000 area. Okay. Obviously we were kind of in this upward rising wedge. We've broken out of that. We have obviously retested this order block up here, which was the previous candle, obviously sending us down. So change of trend candle is here, and we've obviously tested this order block. Now, could we now, after testing this area here, could we now obviously see some more downside Possibly, yeah, and you can see we've kind of had a wick there and a wick there, and we're testing the waters, right? Now, as I said, Bitcoin is in quite a tight range at the moment. We are basically ranging a few $1,000s. Okay, so Bitcoin is in a tight range. We haven't really made any hugely significant moves. Obviously, the significant moves took place down here where we got front run. But this is pretty much where our significant move came to. Now, this was very pivotal right here, this rejection here at around 86,300, purely because that is basically where this higher time frame trend line is taking us. Okay, so the expectation, as I said, was that we would reach around this 90K area. We got to around 88,000, 89,000, but we didn't really tap that 91K area that I was looking at. Okay. So we're obviously going to see some big moves soon. Bitcoin is obviously quite close to this trend line breakout, but it's obviously rejected it. So there is a chance that Bitcoin can tap into this support zone again. And remember, this is a support zone here. This is your support zone for Bitcoin. It basically will be ranging all the way in this level right here. Okay, so there is an expectation that if we do not go higher directly, we will fall back into this support area and possibly tap that 786. But I wouldn't really want it to see. I wouldn't really want to see it go that low. But Bitcoin does have a habit of retracing quite deeply sometimes, and it wouldn't completely invalidate the scenario. What would invalidate further upsides, further upside, in my opinion, would be is if we break below this previous low down here, right? So I'll probably draw that over a horizontal line. So if we break below, and when I say break, I'm not talking about just like a small break. I'm talking about sustained break, right? I'm talking about candle closures below it. I'm talking about, 1 hour, 4 hour candle closures below this. If we break 78,500, then for me, there is a very high probability that we will come back down into this area here, and we will find our final low. And I would like to say it's our final low because Bitcoin really needs to turn around in this area if we fall further. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at Bitcoin. I'm watching it right now. We have to kind of see how this is going to play out. There isn't anything, kind of screaming at me at the moment that will tell us which direction we're going in. We are in this range, so we are back in this range, and there is a chance that we break out of this trend line. But there is also a much larger chance, in my opinion, that we test this support area. Now, as I said, you really want to see Bitcoin hold a higher low. Okay? If we get down here, last chance, but past this point, it's not invalidation. It's not really invalidation. Invalidation for further upside obviously would be below the 74.5K area. That would be official invalidation, in my opinion. But to be honest, I think anything below that previous swing low for me is invalidation. I would not be looking at long in Bitcoin if we have a sustained break below 78,500. Okay. Let's take a look at USDT dominance. So if we look at USDT dominance, you can see that it has, we were in this downtrend, right? We were in this downtrend. We had a swing failure pattern up here. Okay. So we had a series of higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher low, lower high. Okay. So we had a lower high. And obviously, this is obviously where we've failed to make a higher high. Sorry, I'm just looking at my cat in the background who has gone completely insane because he's playing with a toy. Anyway, so lower high, lower low. To be honest, whatever coins were available to long at this point would have been good. Um, I I don't think I've been in really any significant trades though, because I'm not particularly liking the price action at the moment because it's not entirely clear where we are going at the moment. Okay. I like long swing plays most of the time, and I like things to be clear, and this at the moment is just not clear. Okay. Um, anyway, moving on. USDT dominance. We were in a downtrend. We were in this three-wave move down actually, and remember, three-wave moves do not signify that we have a low in place for USDT dominance. Okay, we could potentially reverse at this point. We could potentially go higher. Okay, so three-wave move does not necessarily mean that we won't go higher. Sorry, we won't have we have a high. We could get another high. If we had a five-wave move down on USDT dominance, then obviously you could be looking at potentially. So you have a five-wave move down. That's a little bit extended. You would then look for your three-wave move up, and then this would be where you would see where you would take your long trades. Okay, because remember, USDT dominance works inversely to the market being bullish. Okay, now you can obviously see that USDT dominance has found support around the 5.4% mark. Okay, importantly, we haven't actually broken any lows, any any major swing lows. Like this is a major swing low here on USDT dominance at around 5.17%. This is another major swing low. I'd say this is probably the main major swing low here at around 5%. We haven't broken that. Okay, we haven't broken that on USDT dominance. USDT dominance still looks like it is in an uptrend. Okay, it still looks like it's in an uptrend. If we look at it on the daily, we can still see that it looks like it's in an uptrend. We had this trend line here that I've been watching. I mean, this is this is like a year and a half worth trend line, right, on the daily. And you can see here in April, we actually broke out of that trend line. Okay, that for me is a warning sign. That for me is a warning sign. This is a daily trend line on USDT dominance, and we broke out to the upside of that trend line. Now, I'm not saying we've topped in this cycle for Bitcoin. I'm not saying, all the altcoins are just going to die. I'm not saying that, but I would take this as a warning sign. I would just be aware that USDT dominance has tried to break out of its daily trend line that has been acting as resistance for the past year and a half. Okay, so I would just be aware of that. Okay, we're still in an uptrend. We haven't broken this trend line here that I drew. Okay, we are still in this uptrend. So we have targets for USDT dominance. I have targets for USDT dominance. If we end up breaking out of this trend line again, and we have a sustained break, because this wasn't really a sustained break, unfortunately. This looks more like a deviation. Okay, this is a deviation. We had maybe like 2 days of candle closure, maybe 2-3 days of candle closure above that trend line, and then obviously deviated back under it. However, we are still holding previous support. So USDT dominance is at major support, or at some level of support. Okay. So we are at support for USDT dominance, and we could reverse anytime. Okay, we can reverse anytime. So I think the next few weeks are going to be very important. Okay, they're going to be very, very important, and we can see Bitcoin dominance has been surging upwards as well, which obviously hasn't been giving the altcoins a chance to breathe. Okay, altcoins haven't had a chance to run. So naturally, we are not going to see much movement on altcoins. However, this is a major zone for Bitcoin dominance, okay? We previously tested the 73% area of Bitcoin dominance back in 2021, okay? So this area hasn't been tested in like 4 years, okay? 4+ years. It hasn't been tested. Now we are getting to areas of heavy resistance, right? So I think you might remember we had an event that happened that caused a lot of disruption in the market around the start of February, okay? And now we're simply revisiting, and I always say this about wicks. A lot of the time I see wicks. A lot of the time you do see wicks be visited again, okay? So you have this capitulation event, and then you actually eventually get there, and then that might be where you reverse. Now, I'm not saying we will reverse here on Bitcoin dominance, but I can say that we've obviously been in an uptrend for quite some time. And Bitcoin has basically been running the party, right? It's been running the party. If we take a look at Link, for instance, where has Link got from the bull market, from the bear market? Previous bear market lows were around $5 up to about $8, right? Where are we now? We're at $12. We're at $12. Where was Bitcoin? Bitcoin was at like 17, 15, $16,000, and it went to $100,000. This has been Bitcoin cycle so far, and altcoins just have not been able to run yet. We've had some rallies. I mean, if you look at this from Link, we had a nice three-wave rally, ABC. We had a nice rally there. But again, this is a three-wave move, right? We've just got a three-wave move here. On the higher time frame, we've got a three-wave move. And we want to see a 4 and a 5, okay? That fifth wave, I would love to see Link go to at least $50, right? I expect Link to go to at least $50 for a final push to the upside. So, again, we got to see what happens in the next month. This whole stuff about tariffs, US and China having some like childish war between each other with tariffs, and someone setting it to like 50%, 100%, 200%. Next, it's going to be 1,000%. And obviously, we've got war news a lot of the time that we see come out, whether it's Iran or Israel or something. Something happens, okay? So we've not really had much of a break in terms of market sentiment, okay? We look at something like, for instance, the S&P 500. Look at the S&P 500. Now, this was obviously kind of my prediction that we would maybe test the, this is, to be honest, this is probably quite outdated, those lines. The idea was that we would test the 38.2% fib level. Once we get into this zone, we did. We came back down, but we didn't go straight down. Okay, so I could probably remove this for now. I still think that we go to $4,500 on the S&P 500, right? This here on the lower time frame, so the 1 hour chart, is still a three-wave move. Okay, it's still a three-wave move. I do not see it as a five-wave move. And until we get a five-wave move, then we could be a lot more confident that we have found a low, and we can then look for the next pullback that will basically tell us where we are going from there. Okay. So yeah, I mean, it's really difficult to say right now. S&P 500, for instance, is still looking like it potentially wants lower. This area down here, though, the $4,800 to $4,900 area, was my area of interest because that was we had a previous swing high here. Okay, So this is almost like we're kind of testing. If you look at this on the daily, for instance, you can see that we had this high that we made, retrace back down to 3,500, and then we had this run. Okay, we had this run. Now, out of interest, if we took a fib from COVID low to the high, yeah, I mean, look at this, guys. I mean, it pretty much spot on hit the 100% Fibonacci extension, which is a target to reach for this third wave that we had here. Okay, and you can see we've retraced back down, right? If we add, let's add the 50% and 382, yeah. So you can see what happened here. We basically tapped the 50% fib extension for a reversal. We reversed, quite a nice reversal. I mean, that must have been, yeah, that was considerable, you know, up about 10%, 10%, 13%, something like that. You know, the low might be in. The low might be in. However, there is still the door open for possibly lower on the S&P 500, and that may in turn send Bitcoin lower. Okay, so there's a lot of things you have to look at here. It's not just one thing. There's multiple things that you have to look at. Okay. If we looked at a couple of different coins, for instance, HBAR. So I called a short a while, a long while ago, and final target was 0.128. We reached that. I took a reverse long on my own account. I didn't call it because I was confident, but not too confident. I like to be relatively confident before I call a trade. But you can see the short that we had, it pretty much reached our target perfectly. Okay. Now HBAR, for instance, I still think is a strong coin. I think it's a strong coin in comparison to a lot of other altcoins that we've seen. Do I think that HBAR could go lower? I don't know. Personally, I think we've seen the low for HBAR. I think 0.128 was the low. We could drop lower, but I mean, to be honest, look, I wouldn't want to see HBAR really lose this swing low here. You see this swing low here at around 0.11794. I would not want to really see it lose this level, okay? Because there isn't really much volume between 0.117 and, you know, maybe around like this kind of 0.7, 0.07, 0.08 area, okay? But I can tell you something. If HBAR even reaches down these levels, I mean, this is your buy zone here, right? Not financial advice, but this is your buy zone. Like, I would be looking to buy here. But I mean, I don't think we'll get it. I don't think we'll get it. We'll be lucky as well if we got that, but I don't think we'll get it. Okay. I think that for this cycle, HBAR will potentially reverse around this area. Let's just zoom in a bit more on the 1 hour time frame. So I think HBAR should reverse around this area here. We might get one more dip into support. This is our support. We might get a dip into the 50% between the golden pocket and the 50% fib extension area before we then see upside momentum continue. Okay. So this is an area of interest I'm looking at. We didn't quite hit it yet. I do want to see us possibly go into this area before we continue further up, but you know, everything can go up directly. We don't know at the moment. Solana. So Solana, I'm kind of long and short in a way. So kind of short at the moment. You know, not super high confidence. I mean, I would say that the setup is probably about maybe a 7 out of 10. I say that because we had this trend line that we pretty much broke out of. So we kind of broke out of this trend line that we had and then deviated, went back in, and the hope was obviously that we would kind of push through this resistance area that we have created from this previous swing high up here at around $136.5. Okay. We rejected it. We got close, rejected, and we obviously broke these on the smaller time scale previous lows. Okay. So there is a chance that obviously Solana could push higher. This is why I have DCAs. Okay, so there is a chance that Solana can obviously push past this $136 area. And, you know, we could see possibly the $141 area, maybe even $147. I wouldn't expect Solana to go higher than that. You know, if we're gonna see Solana go higher, it's gonna basically be something like possibly like that, like a wick above, but then I would expect to see a pullback start. Okay, so we're in light at the moment. We're in light, but there are confluences to suggest that we may possibly be testing this area down here again. Really, though, we would need at the very least this $129.3 level to break first before we can confirm that we may get another test into support again. And support is basically between this Fibonacci zone here. Okay, so it's between $122.80 to $114. Around this zone here is going to be your area of support. Okay, local support. So, you know, we have to keep an eye on the market, okay? Let's not go too crazy and heavy into things, but we may see a possible support retest in here. We almost came close to it, to be fair. I don't really think we really tested this spot. I think we came close to it. But we may see a retest of support here before we continue with upside momentum, possible rejection, and then come back down. Has Solana bottomed? I don't know. Hard to say. It came very, very close to the region I was looking at, which was around the 93.75 level. A lot of things came very, very close to areas I was looking at. They just basically front run it. So it is hard to say if we have truly bombed, but there is a chance that we have, and a relatively good chance, right? If we look at Solana on the daily, let's look at the daily, and we had this trend line, okay? We broke above that trend line. Now, what I might like to see is obviously us breaking above this trend line. We've only broken above it in 3 waves, so just bear that one in mind. Once we break above a trend line, we do tend to retest the trend line that we have broken out of. So there is a chance that we obviously come back down at some point soon, maybe in the next few weeks, in the next month. But we may come down to retest that trend line breakout. And then that could be possibly your 1-2 setup. Okay? That could be your 1-2 setup. Obviously, you know where my longs are. My longs are around $120 with a DCA around $114. You know, let's just see how it goes. Let's just see how it goes, because I think if we started closing under $105, then that would be where I would start to worry that Solana might be forming another low. And it's not out of the question, right? I mean, we could still, Solana has a lot of room at this point. If we look at the weekly, we had this this weekly trend line. I draw this like I think it wasn't as straight as I wanted it to be. Yeah, so if we draw this weekly trend line like so, okay, that's our weekly trend line. Yeah, so Let's remove this actually because I think I previously added that. Right, so we still have room, right? Solana still could possibly come to retest this zone again. Okay, and you know, this could be simply an A wave, like an A wave down, B wave up, C wave down, and typically the C wave finishes either on the same level as the A wave or just below the A wave. Okay, so we could possibly be seeing that. Okay, so if I drew this out, A wave, B wave, C wave, possible. And that is if obviously the support here doesn't hold. Because if support doesn't hold here, then yes, you would expect to see Solana possibly retest this area down here at around $93, $94. Okay? This is a buy zone. This is a buy zone. You don't fade this zone here. This is a buy zone. Okay? Let's look at a few others. So if we looked at Doggy. Okay. So what do we have for Doggy? So let's zoom out a little bit. Still a downtrend, unfortunately. I hate to say it, but we're still in a downtrend. Okay, so we haven't really broken out to the upside. I could probably get rid of these lines here because we have already broken down from that channel that we had. So yeah, look at it like this, okay? We have just been making a series of lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs. Okay, let's put that around here. Lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs. We have not made a higher high. Okay. We did try to break out from this trend line. Let me just draw that a little bit like this. Yeah, so we did try to break out. Okay. But then we got pushed back down. Now, you know, Doge could have potentially bottomed here in this zone down here. We did touch that area that I was eyeing up, that I had in green down here, that I completely forgot to set a limit order for, but you know, such is my life, at around, yeah, basically 13 cents, and we got to just under 13 cents. Man, that would have been a good long trade, but you know, when do I ever have my limit order set? Anyway, so we could have bottomed, okay, because this was the zone I was looking at. This was the zone I was looking at for Doge to have potentially bottomed. We had a previous wick down here. It was a previous low from quite some time ago. It was actually in October 2024, so it was last year, and we revisited that and we had a good reaction. You can see this was also previous it was previous resistance, right? So you can see that this area here, this 13 cent level, in general, has been acting as quite a strong level of resistance and support, okay? So you can see here, we broke through it and turned it into support, broke down, it became resistance. Deviation, still resistance, broke down. Retest, still resistance, broke through, retest. Had that really nice rally to the upside, came back down, retest. Doge could have bombed. Okay, so 13 cents between 11.5 to 13 cents. This was your buy zone. Okay, now, you know, we could possibly reject from this trend line again and retest that zone again. As I said, this is your buy zone. I wouldn't fade it. Okay, I would be buying at this level. I would be buying Doge at this level, okay? Excuse me. So, definitely want to keep an eye on for Doge, right? If we break up to the upside, I would like to see at the very least this previous swing high here at around 0. Yeah, I would like to see around 0.174. Even I personally would say 0.18. I'd say 18 cents really. Really, I would want to see this level broken. If I could speak English. Yeah, this level here. This is the level I would like to see break before I can say, yeah, Doge has possibly bottomed, right? But again, and I'll repeat, this is just a three-wave move. Okay? So if we look at this, here, take a fib. Let's go from our A, B. We haven't, well, we've reached the 100%. Okay, we've reached the 100% fib extension. Okay. Ideally, I would like to see Doge have gone a bit higher. You could probably say this is acceptable. However, I would still personally call it a three-wave move, even if we got to the 18-cent level. Okay? But if we do get a move to the upside, I would see the 18-cent level as the next level to watch. So I would say that if we push through, first of all, we need to obviously break through the 17-cent level. Next level would then be the 18-cent. Okay? But we have to watch what Bitcoin's doing. We have to watch what Bitcoin's doing. We have to watch what the rest of the market is doing. We have to watch what USDT dominance is doing. And we have to watch what BTC dominance is doing. Okay? Because all of these charts will affect if our altcoins are going to go up or down. Now, one coin that I haven't really talked about much is Ethereum, because Ethereum, as you know, has been complete trash for quite a while. And it has just been completely outperformed by Bitcoin. Bitcoin, I don't even hear about Ethereum anymore. No one talks about it, right? No one cares. So, Ethereum was in a half decent uptrend. Resistance was at $1,690. We tested it originally at the start of April. Tested it a few days ago. Tested it again. Broke down from this trend line. We have found support at, let's have a look. We have found support at the 50%. So we had a good reaction at the 50% fib retracement level, okay? That has pushed us back above into the 38.2 fib retracement area. We have been hovering above it, and we could potentially see upside reversal and possibly another attempt to push through 1690. Again, if we push through this level, then the next level I would be watching for Ethereum would possibly be around the 1780 mark. Again, though, it doesn't really look convincing. We haven't, I mean, this is quite hard to kind of analyze what this is. I mean, you could possibly call it some kind of 1, 2, and then we'll get a 3, so maybe a WXY. And, this here on the lower time frame, we could see this initial upside as a sorry, I drew that completely wrong. What am I doing? Yeah. ABC. Okay, we can see there's an ABC upside, which again, just a three-way move, right? Just a three-way move. I always say to you guys, for us to have good confirmation that we might have bottomed or we are having some kind of trend reversal, okay? You want to see a five-wave move. Wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, wave 5. Okay, sorry, that was a little bit long for a wave 5. Well, I mean, not necessarily. I mean, wave 5s and wave 3s can extend, but you get what I mean. So you want to see a 5-wave move. When you see this 5-wave move, you get a wave 1, 2, 3. This is what we call a 1-2 setup, right? This is your entry, okay? This is your entry, and if there is any possible break below these levels, then it is possible invalidation of this setup. However, a 5-wave move up with a 3-wave move pullback is relatively reliable, okay? It's not always guaranteed, but it's relatively reliable. We have many times in the market seen 3-wave moves up, and then we get a pullback and it fails, okay? Breaks through, fails, okay? Example here, wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, pullback, swing pattern failure, swing failure pattern, sorry, and then down, broke below the lows, failed, okay? So this is a failure. You see this all the time, and this is why I say that a 5-wave move up is so important. As I said earlier, wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, relatively healthy wave 4. It didn't go below the wave 2. However, we have not broken above the previous 3rd wave high. We are still just 3-wave moves, back down. 3-wave move, back down. And now we have this like consolidation that we're having here. And again, we may possibly push higher. But until we see that, until we see a 5-wave move past resistance, by the way, that's very important. Not just some 5-wave move that, you know, comes to like here and you're like, oh yeah, that's a 5-wave move. No, 5-wave move must push past our resistance zone at $16.90. Okay. As I said though, Ethereum has been pretty bad for the past couple of years. It's performed very badly. I don't even remember when Ethereum's ETF was. I think it might have been when we actually had the rally. Maybe around November time, something like that. I honestly can't remember when we had it, but we did get up to obviously that $4,000 area, and then obviously it's just been downhill from there, right? I mean, it pretty much lost, well, I mean, a lot. Okay, we almost went back to $1,300. So, you know, your money would have been like worth like a third of what you had if you bought Ethereum up here. And, you know, I mean, you look at people who have been holding Ethereum for a pretty damn ass long time, and we are back at levels that, you know, if you bought, I mean, if you bought it like 4 years ago, if you bought Ethereum 4 years ago, you would basically borderline be back where you started. So in terms of investment, Ethereum has not really been an investment. It's not really been an investment at all. Okay. One coin I will talk about before I end this stream is Sui, and Sui is definitely a coin that I like. I like the fundamentals of Sui. But is Sui's bull run over? That is the question, right? You know, hard to say at the moment. My only concern with Sui is if it breaks this level here at $1.6. Reason that would concern me is that was one of the previous major swing lows. Okay. You can see that this area here for Sui has been acting as some level of support since we flipped it. Okay, so we've got a lot of reaction in this zone here. We reacted well and we pushed upwards, but if you look at Sui, we have not broken this downtrend trend line. Okay, again, it's great being bullish, but you need to actually see some bullish confluences to be bullish. Okay, one thing I will say is that yes, we have some form of bullish divergence down here. We had obviously a lower low with a higher high, sorry, a higher low for the RSI. Okay, so let's have a look. You can see that. Hopefully I don't start talking gibberish because I'm smelling food. But you can see that we have bullish, I've already started talking gibberish, bullish divergence, right? Which is possibly a good sign. And to be honest, we need Sui to turn around here. We need Sui to turn around here because if it doesn't turn around here, as I said, I would not want to see it breaking that 1.61 level here. And if it does, it has to break it very, very briefly and have a very strong reaction where we literally just push up very, very quickly, okay? But I would not like to see that. I would not like to see that broken. This is kind of like your last chance of survival here, okay? But again, a lot of altcoins are looking relatively bottomed out and accumulating at the very least some form of spot in general might be a good idea. Not financial advice, but it might be a good idea. But I will only really be able to confirm that we have bottomed until we see a break of structure. And at the moment, we haven't seen that break of structure. We haven't seen that break of structure on Sui. We have seen hints of that break of structure on Solana. Okay. But again, with Bitcoin, we still have not seen a break of structure out of this trend line. Okay. So until we see a breakout of this trend line, that for me would be possible indication that we've bottomed. Okay. I would like to see 3 waves, possible 4th wave. I mean, this is still technically a valid 4th wave, 83k. It's a bit shallow. Much rather have preferred a slightly deeper pullback into maybe the 81, 82k region, and then a push higher, possibly into the 90k area. Then I might be able to say, okay, Bitcoin has bottomed. We won't see anything below 74.5k, and we can possibly catch the pullback that we will get to retest this trend line. Maybe it'll be around here. Maybe it'll be a little bit higher than that, but we might see that in the middle towards the end of May as a guesstimate. So that is pretty much all I could say on the market at the moment. I hope that was helpful. Sorry, I just was looking at the chat. All right, so there is a question about quarterly VWAP. Yeah, I will. So, okay, thanks for that, dude. But I will probably do possibly a video on that later. Or I will, at the very least, maybe write something up about what VWAP actually means. I don't use it too much. I probably have a lot of confluences that I'm using and try not to pollute my brain too much, but it can be useful in things like obviously point of control, etc., things like that. They are obviously useful confluences, but I will possibly do a write-up about that later on. But I do need to bail. Thank you very much, guys, for watching my stream. Really appreciate the support. Hope this was helpful. Don't ape into trades. Keep your position size small on every trade that you do so you don't get liquidated. Trade safely, my friends.